I am the proud owner of exactly one pair of trousers. I have really been struggling with my wardrobe lately because I think I have a lot of holes in my wardrobe that probably wouldn't be there if I usually wore modern clothes. So I own a ton of formal wear. I own a ton of things that I enjoy making. What I don't own a ton of are things that aren't fun to make but are really useful for putting outfits together. So today what I'd like to do is fill a pretty glaring hole in my wardrobe and work on making some trousers. Yeah, of course I'm going to be making historical trousers. I have been focusing quite a bit lately on the 1890s and the Edwardian era, so that's probably the era that I'm going to be looking at today. And you would have seen essentially two main styles of trousers. So you would have seen bloomers in various amounts of volume. So you'd see some that were fairly slim cut and some that were pretty fluffy, pretty voluminous. And you would also see something called a split skirt. So that looks like a skirt from the front, but it actually is trousers. Today, I'm just gonna be focusing on bloomers. Bloomers were pretty much exclusively worn for sporting activities. This was not a casual ensemble that you could just wear around town. The two most common applications that I've seen for bloomers have been either under a bathing costume or as part of a cycling ensemble. Now, luckily I don't live in the 1890s, so I can just wear my cycling trousers wherever I want. So I think they'll do a really good job of filling this hole in my wardrobe. I really want to explore this kind of like cool historical tomboyish look. Definitely channeling my inner Jo March for this one. Let's get started. For my first project, I chose this free pattern by Bikes and Bloomers. Unfortunately, it does only come in one size, which is about a UK size 12. For the fabric, I think I have just enough left over from this skirt. This pattern takes about 1.5 yards. After cutting everything out and adding all the pattern markings, especially the location of the welt pockets, I stitched up the crotch seams of both the fabric and the lining. I do recommend a modern style lining instead of flat lining since it's probably the best way to get a clean finish on the pockets. Okay, I completely spaced out that the best time to do the welt pocket is definitely before you put the facing on. It should also be before you do anything with the lining really. So let's back up a little bit and I'll show you how I think you're supposed to do the welt pockets. Honestly, the welt pockets I think are super confusing on this pattern, but I'm pretty sure I've got it figured out and I will do my best to show you what I think you're supposed to do, but also don't trust my judgment because I don't really actually know what I'm doing, like ever. So for this part of the pattern, you're essentially dealing with 3 pieces. The first piece is the front of the trousers. The next piece is the pocket bag. And this is the pocket bag, not the pocket bag facing. And finally, you also want the welt pocket bearers / piping. For this part of the recipe, it's super important that you do a really good job on marking absolutely everything. So you need to mark the trouser front as well as the pocket bag. And I've also marked the cutting line, which is these extra marks that you see in the center. It kind of looks like a really long Y. And if you don't do those markings, they're not going to come out even and they're going to end up looking strange. So make sure that you mark your pattern, even if it's not something that you normally do. Layer the markings on top of each other and sew just that one side closest to the hip. Once you've done that, tuck the welt piping into the seam, raw edge first. Sew up the other long seam of the welt, leaving the tiny seam that's at the top and bottom of the rectangle open. Cut along the Y shape through just one layer, being really careful not to cut the welt piping. Flip it over and repeat this on the other side. When you're done, you should have something that looks like this. Flip the pocket through to the back side of the pants. The welt also needs to be pulled through to the back of the pants. Basically, you just like shove it through that tiny opening that was left at the top of the rectangle. Iron everything so that it looks nice and clean. And you're almost done. That was the hard part. Flip the pants over and then sew the pocket bag lining to the pocket. If you marked the location of the welt correctly, the pocket bag lining will be even with the top and side edge of the pants. The final step for the pockets is to secure the opening that you left at the top and the bottom. I did this by hand, but a more common finish would probably be to use a really tight zigzag. The rest of these trousers are pretty straightforward. I finished the facing edge with some contrasting bias tape and then attached them to the front and back of the trousers. I stitched up the side seams and gathered the leg openings and attached the cuffs. I think pleats would probably be more common on a historical garment, but that sounded like a lot of work, so. The final step is to do the buttons and the buttonholes, and then you're done. I am so excited about how these trousers came out. I think that they're totally perfect. They're so easy to wear. They match basically everything in my wardrobe. They're perfect for summer. I also think that they came out better than they did the last time I made them. It's really useful to make the same thing more than once because it really gives you the opportunity to refine the pattern, get used to how it gets put together, and it also helps you decide what you really like in your wardrobe. I struggled kind of a lot with what I wanted to do for the second half of this video. And in the end, I kind of decided to just make Bikes and Bloomers a little bit of a theme. Bikes and Bloomers is a little organization that did a bunch of research. They've even published a book, and they also have, I think, 9 different free patterns that you can access on their website. Most of the patterns are skirts, but 2 of them are bloomers or cycling trousers. And I've done the first one, which is the pair I'm wearing now. And for my second project, I think I want to do just the other pair of bloomers that they offer on their website, which is a much more voluminous and less fitted pair. These ones feel like a little bit of a risk because just looking at them, I am worried that they're going to be too fluffy and they're going to look silly. So I am going to make them and see how it goes. So let's get started. For this project, I chose some wool plaid that I got on sale last year. This pattern is incredibly simple and seems to mostly just be composed of a front and back and then bands for the waist and knee cuffs. I really like having pockets, especially on my trousers, so I think I'll add an inseam pocket on one side and then a little tiny welt pocket for a watch on the other. I'll save the other side seam for the closure mechanism. For this pair of trousers, I'm doing a much more classic form of the welt pocket. You can cut a long rectangle and trace the welt pocket opening onto the rectangle near the top. So all the way around the edges and then cut the opening open. You can cut through all the layers this time. Just like before, shove the pocket to the back side of the fabric. You don't need the piping this time because the actual pocket itself forms the welt. Fold the top down halfway over the opening and then the bottom up to cover the rest. Fold the rest of the pocket up to match the top edge and then sew all the way around the edges. Unfortunately, for some reason, the audio got corrupted, but at this point I had some concerns. First, these are way too poofy and they're gonna look completely insane. And second, the crotch is way too low. It's probably like 3 inches above my knees. I think the obvious thing to do here is to leave the trousers as is and let it be a split skirt instead of gathering it into the puffs at the knees. And then I think I'm gonna have to shorten the whole pair of trousers by taking some of the extra length out of the top. This will shorten the trousers at the same time as it will raise the crotch. Unfortunately, this means I'm going to have to redo a ton of the work, including the pleating and the welt pocket. Another super successful outfit. I'm so happy with how this ended up turning out. I was a little concerned there in the middle when I started looking at just how fluffy they were, but in the end, I think I made the right decision to leave it as a split skirt instead of doing the bloomers, and I can see myself wearing this all the time. I think what I love the most about it is that it's definitely giving me some kind of like dark academia steampunky vibes, which I'm totally living for that aesthetic for this fall. By far, my absolute favorite thing about the skirt is the little tiny pocket for the watch. I actually went out and specifically bought a pendant chain for my Apple Watch so that I could wear it as a pocket watch. What's the point in wearing historical fashion if you're not going to be a little bit extra about it? Even though I ended up having to do quite a bit of the work twice because the crotch was too low and the skirt was a little too long, I'm really glad that I did do the extra work, because if I had left it as is, I know that I never would have ended up wearing it because I just wouldn't really have been comfortable in it. So really glad that I went back and fixed the issues that it had, and I think it came out great. I'm really glad that I spent this time to try and fill in some of the gaps in my wardrobe, and I think that that's definitely going to be a big project for me going forward, is trying to figure out how to get the most out of my wardrobe and really identify all the pieces that I'm probably missing. And I will definitely link like the cool belt and the watch chain down below in case you're interested in either of those things. The other thing I feel like I learned from this project is just how great I feel in a Gibson girl talk. Like, so cute, right? I think that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.